or that they felt ready to take the bar. So what I'd like to point out is that, as the statistics on the slide before you show, is that the program is up and running. You can see how many, as of December 1st, how many graduates are already actively involved in the program, 387. So one of the things that I'd like to go back to point out, this was mid-July that this program was deemed to be created by the Supreme Court. Not that very many months ago. And here we are, December 4th, and the program is up and running, and there are nearly 400 graduates participating in the program. This, I believe, is a great tribute to Amy and her staff for, at lightning speed, to take a program that was conceptualized in late July and is operating now. I know there are lots of criticisms out there in the public world, and I understand the frustrations that the graduates are feeling in light of this pandemic, but you know, we're really all in the same boat, and I feel a need to commend the staff for the wonderful job that they've done in putting this program to work as quickly as they have. And that's only half the story. Paul has the rest of the story.
So there are some add-ons that the working group is working on. First, it decided to open up this program to bar takers from July 2015 forward who scored a 1390 or above, you know, which is the new cut score. And I don't know that that recommendation has gone to the Supreme Court yet, because we're working on a second aspect, which is to provide a path to full bar membership for those 1390 scorers. We met, I think it was last month, and decided that if those people meet all the other requirements for bar passage or for bar admission, such as moral character, passing the MPRE, etc., and they work a certain number of hours in the program, and we propose two alternatives for the Supreme Court's consideration. One is 360 hours for those who got their score in July 2017 or later, or 480 hours for those in the July 2015 to February 2017 range. And then an alternative scheme was 400 hours for July 2017 and later, or 600 hours for July 2015 to February 2017. In either case, their supervising attorney would have to certify that they possess the minimum competence to practice law without supervision, which is not an element of the program for 2020 graduates. But don't ask me to explain the rationale for some of this, because it remains unclear to me, but that is what the working group voted. As far as the status of this, we commented back to Donna Herskowitz on a draft proposed language, and I believe that's going to go out for public comment pretty soon. And we may be meeting later in the month, right around Christmas, to consider public comment. So it's going to probably have a very short public comment period, and then it would go to the Supreme Court, and at what point they take it up and decide to implement it or not is open to question. So Amy, do you have any more details about exactly where that is in the pipeline?
It's my understanding that the amended rules, at least the first portion. I'm looking at expanding the eligibility criteria has been, it's either went up for public comment yesterday or perhaps today. I have not been able to check the website before coming here to this meeting. And secondly, we are going to be meeting this, maybe if not the coming week, the week after, the week before Christmas, to discuss that second component that you talked about in terms of the narrowing down the number of hours that can be used in lieu of a bar examination with those people who meet the eligibility criteria.
Okay, so the idea is after putting in time as a provisionally licensed lawyer, those 1390 scores could, assuming they meet all the other requirements, come out as and be admitted to the bar as full members without retaking the bar exam.
And it's a two-part requirement. So it's the number of hours and also a positive or successful evaluation from the supervising lawyer.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's, I think, all we have on that.
Okay, thank you. This next item is just an update on the Blue Ribbon Commission. So the State Bar Board of Trustees approved the establishment of a joint Blue Ribbon Commission on the future of the California bar exam. This is a partnership with the California Supreme Court. That commission is charged with reviewing findings from various bar exam studies, which include CAPA and the NCBE job analysis, to determine the future of the bar exam, looking at both the format and the scope of the exam. The application period closed on November 30th. So the Supreme Court will be making its decisions on based on the applications received, and the work is scheduled to commence in January. Are there any questions?
Amy, this is Robbie. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
I think I just want to follow up a little bit, sort of, to what Dolores and Paul said. You know, I was really impressed with something that I recently got, and all the lawyers on the commission will have gotten it. I think it was with respect to bar dues. It came before bar dues. I was just pulling it up online so I could remind myself. It talked about provisional licensing and the Blue Ribbon Commission. It went out to, I believe, every licensed lawyer in the state. I thought it was very well written, thoughtful, and informative. And sometimes I think we live in a little bit of a bubble here on the CBE, where we receive public comment of a variety of opinions about access and things. But I really felt that even if I was not on this committee, if I was just, Jim or Jane Sixpack, who was a practicing lawyer and got information about my fee bill, I felt really informed about provisional licensing. In fact, I forwarded this, I'm a judge in Pasadena, to Sacramento to see if we could become part of that program to provide the requirement for provisional lawyers and information about the Blue Ribbon Commission. So I don't know who writes that. It had a little bit of an Amy Nunez sound. I don't know if that was you that writes that went out to all members of the bar. But again, as Paul and Dolores both said, we're putting these programs together so quickly. And I'm really not trying to gild the lily because I'm on the CBE, but it's really impressive how we're getting out, I think, quality information about how the program is evolving and moving forward. So hats off to whoever is getting this public information out to members of the bar, Amy, to you and your staff.
Thanks. Oh, and I'm not going to take credit for that. We have a public information team that put that together, and really it's an effort to try to put the word out there about this program. We've received feedback from students who are very eager to find these opportunities. So that was an effort for us to be able to help identify supervising lawyers, because I think that's a challenge to some of the students. And as a matter of fact, Caroline Holmes, Audrey, and I participated with Donna on a joint effort with the California Lawyers Association to explain what the requirements are for supervising lawyers as a way of really getting the word out and trying to find opportunities, or at least that partnership for potential partnership for applicants that are seeking supervising lawyers. And there were a few lawyers that were on that same simulcast that were participating in the project and talked about the benefits at their local law offices. And so, yeah, the most important thing is just trying to make sure that we successfully implement this and create that opportunity for as many students as possible, or applicants.
Awesome.
Can I ask a question about, I'm sorry, I should have asked it earlier, about provisional licensing? Is it too early to have any kind of data as to, who is being approved and who is not being approved, and, what are the sort of criteria that have bubbled up as the key issues in all of this?
Oh, yeah. So we received this question in the past. So we presented some of this information at the CS Bars meeting yesterday. You'll hear about that later, and at the Law School Council. And what we can determine right now in terms of the denials, they're really related to people not meeting the eligibility criteria. Specifically, I think people have heard that there's an expansion, the potential of an expansion of the program to those that perhaps did not graduate, were not part of this last year's graduating class, but that scored that 1390 and above and have prematurely submitted applications. There are students that also have not submitted the documentation required. We need official sealed transcripts. And so there are a small portion of denials. The difference in the statistics that you see there between those that have applied and those that also have been approved is a combination of denials, as well as people who've submitted an application that are not complete. Something's missing in the application process, whether it's documentation, payment, or somebody just didn't finish the application altogether.
So you don't see any systemic issues or whatever?
Not at all.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay. All right. So we're on now with the October bar exam, and I think we are going to start with Tammy Campbell.
Good morning, everyone. So just to give you guys some numbers on how everything went with the October 2020 bar exam, we had 13,082 applicants apply for the exam. We had 9,301 that actually sat and took the entire exam. Out of that 9,301, we had 8,920 that took that exam online, and 381 that actually sat for it in person. So we had a very large number that sat online, and everything went very well. So that's a good thing to see. The video review is currently underway for all of the online applicants. We are currently reviewing 3,190 applicants that were flagged for their videos. That's across various sessions. It doesn't mean every session was flagged, but it is 3,190 applicants that we are currently reviewing. And everything is going well. And our expectation is we will be done reviewing the videos by December 18th. So a couple more weeks and we'll be able to say we finished the review, and we'll be able to move on to the next phase of what we need to do. So that's all I have for the numbers on the bar exam.
Okay. And then the video file review, Tammy?
Oh, I just gave all of that information.
Oh, sorry about that.
Sorry, I kind of segued right into my next part.
Okay, no problem. All right, and then with an update on where we're at with grading, we have Christina Dole. Christina. Oh, there she is. Christina, somehow we can't hear you, right? Or is it me? Christina.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry about that. So this has been a distinctive exam, not only because it was the first remote bar exam, but because there is a new pass score. As was mentioned earlier, in July of this year, the Supreme Court lowered the passing score for the California bar exam to 1390 to be applied to the October exam and forward. Currently, the graders are finishing up the first read of the written answers. However, we have a phased grading process, which means that examinees within 40 points of the pass line, or those with a total scaled score of 1350 to 1389, enter phase 2. And all of their 6 written answers are read a second time by a different set of graders. Now, historically, a July, or in this case, the October exam, with the number of applicants that we have, would take approximately 16 weeks to grade. However, we will be releasing results at 14 weeks, and that will be on January 15th of 2021. And that is my update.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right. So I would like to present on the post-exam survey. So as you may recall, in June, when we had the first online exam for the Office of Admissions, and that was with the first year law student exam, we conducted a post-exam survey to ask applicants, examinees about their testing experience. We use that as a model for a survey that we conducted in partnership with the NCBE. And the goal was to elicit information about a range of topics. And this includes things like people's familiarity with online examination, the steps that they took to prepare for the exam administration, their assessment of the utility of instructional materials that we developed to assist with the remote administration, concerns about the remote administration, and challenges that they experience with specific components of the remote exam. And this could include technology, location, the utility of the mock exam, and responsiveness of the help desk or support process. So again, the goal was to gather as much information as a means of improving the remote testing experience on future exams. So can we go to the next slide, please? So the survey was sent to all 9,615 examinees who registered for the remote exam. And we received responses from over half. So 5,305 provided a response, which yielded a 55% response rate. What we learned is that it's clear that test takers were under extraordinary stress for this administration of the exam. The pressure of the pandemic and the short timeline available to adjust and prepare for the remote exam were reflected in a number of survey results. Almost 6 out of 10 respondents, so 59%, expressed moderate or extreme concern over having to take an exam in any manner during the pandemic. However, despite this anxiety, when asked how they would prefer to take the bar exam if they had to sit for it again, respondents reported as follows, and as you see there, almost 2/3, so 63%, reported preferring to take it online in an isolated environment, which could include home or a hotel, as some have took the exam. Another 25% preferred to take it on the computer in a group setting, such as a school or at a test center, while only 6% preferred taking the exam in some other fashion other than a computer, so most likely in the traditional format of an in-person exam. Also, over half, 57%, reported that they were satisfied with remote testing, while 28% reported some level of dissatisfaction. Can we go to the next slide, please? As for technical issues that were experienced, prior to the day of the exam, applicants were required to conduct a mock exam. The goal of that mock exam was to mimic what was going to happen on the exam day. And this is just the logistics in regard to the system. So the mock exam required that people access the password process, the implementation and use of that password, as well as the exam features in each of the question types, whether that was a multiple choice question, essay, or a PT, were included in that mock exam. So about 1 in 5 students, 22% experienced, reported having technical issues with the mock exam. And of those, of the 22%, more than half reported that it took them more than 45 minutes to resolve technical issues during the mock exam. One of the things that was reported to us also from ExamSoft was that if people were successful on the mock exam, that the success rate for the actual exam would be reflected. So if you could successfully take the mock exam, you should not experience any problems at the exam. And perhaps that is the case because on exam day, only 15% of respondents reported having technical issues. ExamSoft also conducted analysis on the data they were collecting, and this included call records and primarily call records that they kept as calls were coming into their call center. And their figures indicate that the company was contacted by just over 8% of exam takers, and that the company was able to successfully resolve over 80% of these inquiries. So we are looking at this data to look at methods for improving, and there are 3 areas that we're going to focus on: instructional material and the timeliness of those instructions. We've already started that. If you look at our website, our FAQs are up for the February 2021 exam that we know is going to be administered online. We also have shared the testing conditions as soon as possible. So they were all delivered to people who've applied so far, and you'll hear about that in Audrey's report. We also are working with ExamSoft to ensure that features that are going to be available for the actual exam are also available in the mock exam. Now, I talked about the fact that we have this data set. It's a rich data set, and we're developing a summary of findings that is going to be available in a publication that we'll be putting on our website. So these are some of the survey highlights, but there's definitely more data out there, and it is forthcoming. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I have a question, Amy.
Yes.
I can't do the math in my head, but for the your second bullet there, 15% of respondents had technical difficulties, but that was only 8%, and then they resolved 80%. What happens to those that don't get resolved? What sort of problems were there? And do people get to like take those sections over, or it wasn't that serious of a problem?
You know, I can't really describe what happened with people who were not successful. What I can tell you is of everybody who started the exam, and we have this breakdown for all of the every single question, whether it's an essay, MBE, or the PT, of people who started, on average, 97.3 uploaded an exam file. So the success rate was pretty high. That remaining, group, I think it's like 2.7%, are probably people who weren't able to upload an exam file. So it's a small proportion, but it's still something that we want to be able to address. One of the things that we did during the exam, and maybe Audrey could speak to this, is there was a Zoom room that was established with ExamSoft. So we were live interacting with ExamSoft throughout the entire exam administration. And in that process, we could immediately respond to needs that were coming up. So one of the first things is, as you may recall, is that everybody had about a 15-minute window in the event that they were having issues, a 15-minute window for when the password was active. Through the Zoom room, we were able to increase that time to avoid these situations. And so, if it was a matter of having accessibility so that somebody, could access a password, let's say around 11:30, 11:45, when the cutoff was at 11:30, we allowed for that just to help resolve and reduce some of these problems. So for the most part, I think problems that persisted were primarily laptop issues.
Wow. I just want to extend Robbie's accolades to you to this section also. I know this is a lot of detail, so we're just getting a glimpse of, some of these behind the scenes, and it's really a lot. So thank you for all that.
Oh, yeah, and we have a great team that is spearheading a lot of these initiatives. So, it's definitely a team effort here. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I have a question next.
Okay.
So this might be really another top discussion, but have you started to, it's obvious these are very positive results. It's obvious that probably like the rest of the world, we're going to be moving more and more towards maybe a hybrid remote in-person exam, for over the long run. Have you started to look at long-term how that plays out, especially in regards to cost?
So I think there's a lot that we can be looking at. I mean, this is a post-exam survey, and the information that we have in terms of, the ratio of people who took registered for the exam and those that completed it is a rich data set in terms of what we can be looking at. But we are focused right now on completing this exam cycle between and preparing for the next one. But, we're going to continue collecting this information because I think it'll be interest of everyone in terms of what the future of the bar exam is. I mean, this could even shed light on some of the BRC information that, for the BRC, Blue Ribbon Commission. But, I think your question, Larry, was, are we collecting this for decision-making on the future of the bar exam? And we are. This is our first data set, and we'll continue to do this for the remaining exams that we are going to be conducting.
Were there any notable cost differentials? For example, you didn't have to rent a lot of big, convention center rooms and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, we have not been able to conduct that analysis yet. We always bring it to the committee, but part of it is also how long it takes us to get our invoices. So this exam happened in October. It usually takes a couple of months for all of the invoices to come in. And so we're in the process. We will be bringing that to the committee, but we did bring that and demonstrated a cost savings with the first year exam. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, Amy, I know this is too soon to request, but I just wanted to hopefully provide some additional inquiry where I'm interested to see the equity issues, because I know there was 20% of those who didn't get their issues resolved. And so I'm interested to understand what type of participant that was, and also identifying what are some equity issues we're seeing in the remote bar administration. This was one of the more bigger critiques, as in regard to tech and in regard to people's access to the things they needed to be successful in this test. But I think that'll be we'll learn more once we get the exam results. But I think in the past, we've waited probably 2 to 3 years to do, not 2 to 3 years, maybe a year or two, to do examinations. Like when we went from a 3 to 2 day, and we analyzed the impact of that as well. I think we even have a report today studying that, the financial impact. But I know it's too soon to tell, but if that could be something that we really hone in on, that would be helpful.
Okay, thanks, Corinne. Well, and there's 2 different ways that we can look at this information to address some of the equity concerns. I mean, we anticipated, the potential for this when we offered applicants the ability with extenuating circumstances to take the exam in person. Some of the statistics that were shared as to who came to the exam, like how many people were in person and how many people were took this online, reflected that. We provided a space on site for people who did not have access to perhaps a testing environment or the Wi-Fi, have Wi-Fi capacity at home. So what we're hoping that does is eliminate, this the potential for inequity, right? The other thing is, we work with the law schools and to try to address issues and help them support their students by providing space on site. One of the big issues that also was raised yesterday when we met with the Law School Council and the CS bars was this need for schools to want to provide group settings. And the concern around that is the inability for the AI to differentiate to really function without flagging somebody with multiple people in the room. So if we had 5 students in a big auditorium, that sounds ideal, especially if people kept away from the camera, but any noise or any technical issues would affect the other people testing in that same area. So we're trying to work as much as possible and address as many inequity issues as possible. The other issue I know that was raised was one about, certain parts of AI might limit, people with darker skin being able to get into the system, locking them out of the photo or the baseline establishment versus taking the exam in at a later time. And, we did not lock anybody out of the exam when the baseline photo didn't match. When it didn't match, we did a post-exam determination. We had various instances. We collected pictures, photos of all applicants outside of the system in our AIM system. And then we also had the baseline photo and the photo before each essay. So we were able to establish that post-exam in the event anybody was locked out. So, again, in terms of some of the bias or potential bias, we tried to address that early on in our design of how we implemented the exam.
I appreciate that, Amy. I guess, this is definitely the task of the Blue Ribbon Commission, but I guess on our part, we could kind of get a better understanding of, what limitations are, what unintentional limitations we have on diversity, access, and inclusion. And part of that, and my belief is just understanding that if there are any impacts to that we aren't seeing, and as you mentioned, that we're mitigating those. So I appreciate your report and you really digging in on some of those. And I know it'll be some time before we see some results where we will be able to kind of dial in and get one of our researchers to really look into it. But I just think that that'll help us, especially since there's been so much discussion about diversifying the bar and the impact to communities of color. And so I think that'll be very helpful for us, going into 2021. But thank you, I appreciate it.
No problem. All right. Any other questions about the post-exam survey? All right, well, thank you. Next, we have Audrey, who's going to talk to us about the upcoming February 2021 bar exam.
Yes, so just between our last committee of bar examiners meeting and today, we also administered the first year law students exam in November, again, remotely. So we are getting more and more practice at administering remote exams. We did get the direction from the Supreme Court on November 19th that the February exam was going to be remotely administered for most applicants. All these deadlines that we have up on these slides are on the website. Just putting them up here so you all have some idea of the upcoming milestones with the exam. The final filing deadline, different cadence of when folks can withdraw with different amounts of refunds. Obviously, applicants are, would like to, if they know they want to withdrawing with, they get at least a 30% refund in the next couple weeks would be something they might want to note. In terms of folks who just sat the October exam, we are opening up applications for those applicants on January 2nd. So in advance of the results being released, we understand that some of the applicants who just set the exam in October still want to apply. So if they apply in early January and then we release the results and they find out that they pass, they will be able to get a full refund. So folks who want to apply for various reasons in advance of getting the results can start applying on January 2nd. And then all those, that same pool of immediate repeaters will have 10 business days after the release of the results to timely file. So that's the same statutory amount of time they always have. So when we release results, they'll have those 10 business days as well. Next slide. So some more different deadlines that are coming up a lot are tied to that final filing deadline of January 4th, including when you can file your testing accommodations petition, and then the appeals of your testing accommodations, and then for emergencies. So Amy mentioned this, but we got that direction from the court on November 19th to administer the exam remotely. And obviously with all the post-exam feedback from those over 5,000 applicants who sat the exam in October, we also debrief with the staff, debrief with our communications department, and have a lot of feedback from law schools about getting out as early as possible, as much communication as possible clearly to applicants. So we actually sent out to the 2,145 applicants for the February exam this acknowledgement and acceptance of testing conditions document yesterday. So the folks who've already applied will be able to read through what our conditions are, you know, what does it look like to take the remote exam, what kind of minimum system requirements will I need, and then they will have those options to accept all those conditions or let us know that they have extenuating circumstances, so that we will be able to provide testing space for folks who might need it because of their what their conditions are, where they are taking the test at home or their Wi-Fi. So we have that same sort of process, but we're getting out in front of it a lot earlier. The FAQs are up already, including a PDF of those conditions. So in case they sign it and they want to make sure they reread through it, it's all up on the website. If you talk to applicants or anyone who might be listening from the public, please encourage applicants to whitelist emails from the bar. We don't want to be in the situation where folks are missing communication from us because it goes to their spam or junk mail folders, which can happen. I think there's a lot of the settings on email are more strict. So just make sure that emails coming from the bar are getting to you, that you're updating your email address when it changes, and then if you actually, if you go to the next slide, we've posted all these other deadlines up on our website as well. So we're trying to, again, get really ahead of the game, put everything out there. When do you need to turn in that acknowledgement form? You know, with January 15th, that was on the last slide. But when are the mock exams going to open? The admittance tickets, the deadline for you to finish the mock exams. These are all dates that we're kind of establishing in real time last exam period for October, but we're able to plan it out now so applicants all have a clear picture when they're supposed to have everything done and then be able to actually download all those exam files. We also have up on the website now what the schedule is going to be. So day 1 will be the essays and the performance test, and day 2 will be all the MBE questions. So whereas last time, because of the way the schedule worked out, we actually had the performance test as part of day 2, but just so everyone knows, attorney exam takers will be sitting on day 1 again, and would not need to come back for the MBE on day 2. So if you want to look at the schedule, we're also giving sort of going backward about how everything worked on the remote side and how test takers felt about getting into each answer file or each exam file. During the test, we're giving 30 minutes between when the password is released and when you need to be in the next session. So we've given more time. So hopefully that allows, you know, for any troubleshooting that an applicant might need, or for their answer files and video files to actually be uploaded as they're taking the test, to give them more time to kind of get through clearing all that data out of their computers while they're taking the test, so they have more data and storage space as they're sitting the exam. So you can look at that schedule and see that we've given now 30 minutes between password and time to get into the exam session. plus also still each day having an hour for lunch. Post-exam, these are the typical upload deadlines the day after by noon, and then depending on if you have your extra time or extra days, there's different upload deadlines for accommodated applicants. I think that might be all from me. Any questions about the February exam?
Yes, I have a question, Audrey.
Yeah, go for it.
So what is the status of like ExamSoft updates? I know the last go around, it was our first time, but I believe there were some slight surprises where they had some videos that popped up that weren't originally planned or weren't originally indicated. So I guess in our communications to examinees, are they providing like an agenda or a rundown of what the exam entails and what to like kind of prepare for? Because I just could imagine that if something comes up differently, it kind of throws you off your game face if it's not what you expected.
You mean something in the actual, like once they're in the software, or what they had to do to update the software before?
Once they're inside the software.
Okay, well, yeah, and it's our hope. So one of the things that was not great about how we had the mock exams for October was that they couldn't practice the performance test the way that it was actually going to be administered. So that will be different this time around. So applicants will be able to see how the performance test will be in the software during the mock exam. Other than that, I'm not sure what other aspects of the software were different to what they practiced. There was an update that they had to do right before the exam because there was an issue identified with Apple devices. And so I think that was a surprise that we're now ahead of, that they all their subsequent updates with the software on the ExamSoft side will not allow the Apple devices to communicate to each other. But our understanding is that the mock exams, and there'll be 2 required ones, and then there'll be additional optional mock exams. So the applicants will get plenty of practice, and we'll put in old California bar exam questions in the mock exam, again, to give them as much practice in a real environment as possible, they'll be practicing as it will be in the actual exam.
Yeah, I guess thank you for answering that. I guess for me it's just the transparency part. We're kind of like seeing that that update was kind of a big deal, kind of understanding how that impacted the administration of the test, or what kind of privacy protections it impacted on people's computers. But I guess for me it's just understanding if there's any further updates that will be provided, and then of course understanding what updates have been made that are significant. I guess is something that would be important to know, and kind of to reinforce the integrity of the bar exam in itself.
And all the documents that we have up in the FAQs and in that testing conditions document lists what those minimum system requirements are going to be, and what sort of operating systems for both Apple and Windows computers. I know one thing that they haven't been able to update on the ExamSoft side is that Apple computers came out with a new chip processor for Apple devices on all the brand new MacBooks, I believe, that they are not updated to be able to run the ExamSoft software on. So that is on all those. I have that updated. So just in case anyone for the holidays gets a brand new Mac, they may want to test on their older device.
That's really good to know, because I was actually, well, I'm not taking the test, but I do want to purchase a new device. Thank you, Audrey. I appreciate that.
Okay, thanks, Kareem. Anyone else? I guess maybe just, again, moving a little bit backward, just to echo what Amy said, during the exam day, we were in those Zoom rooms troubleshooting in real time with ExamSoft and our own call center. So I'm assuming that'll be the same again. So when issues come up for applicants, we can do things like extend the time for them to get into a session, or allow them to, even in real time, we did allow some folks who something happened with their exam file to re-download something and take it during the day. So that's why we were able to get to, from there were people who were calling in with issues, but we were able to resolve a lot of those in real time. And that'll be the expectation we have again for this exam, is that we will be in constant contact with ExamSoft and for our applicants, troubleshooting for them as issues come up.
Okay, thanks, Audrey.
Thank you.
All right, the next item that we're gonna update everybody on is differential item functioning. So the board directed the CBE to work with the Council on Access and Fairness to examine the bar exam for differential item functioning. As you may recall, differential item functioning analysis evaluates whether their different groups perform consistently better or worse on specific questions. So this working group will be examining questions flagged as showing signs of statistically performance differences for test takers across groups. And the groups that were analyzed, there were 3 primary variables: gender, race and ethnicity, and law school type. So again, to better understand the results of the diff analysis and to proactively monitor for diff in the future, it was recommended that the State Bar convene a panel that's charged with reviewing the questions flagged in the 2020 differential item functioning analysis, as well as to develop guidelines for minimizing the risk of future differential item functioning. So the working group is going to include 2 members from COAF and 4 members from the CBE, and our first meeting date is scheduled for December 18th. Any questions?
Who are the 4 members from the CBE?
So Alex Chan, Bethany Peak, Dr. James Bolton, and oh my gosh, Vince, right?
Michael Iseri.
Oh, sorry, Michael Iseri. You guys, sorry, I did not make a note of that. Thank you, Michael. Yes, those are the 4 members.
Awesome. That's a phenomenal group.
Yes, thank you. All right, next item. We're going to hear from Tara Clark.
Morning. So this is just a brief update on the Bar Exam Strategies and Stories program. So this was first offered in July of 2018, and we've offered it again in the July exams or October, which was our summer exam for this year. So this will be the first time we're offering it in February. As of December 2nd, we had 225 people that had already signed up. It is now available for applicants to sign up in the Ames portal. So when they're actually registering for the bar exam, that last step, they can go ahead and register there. We're also sending out email reminders to those who have not yet registered for the program, so they still have the opportunity to do so. Since we know folks are kind of in a limbo period right now when some are waiting for their test results or deciding whether or not they're going to sign up for the exam, we do have 2 waves of the program. So for those who sign up early, it will be available mid-December for them. And for those who decide to wait and sign up later, it'll be available in late January. So it still gives them a little bit of time before they take the exam. Any questions?
Yes. Good morning, Tara. It's Kareem. Hope you're doing well. I am interested to see if we've gotten any, what was the participation rate for the October exam?
I don't have that yet. They're still analyzing the results from the October exam.
Okay.
And one of the asks that we have for the researchers are to come and do a presentation to the CBE once that's completed. So that is forthcoming.
And yeah, and when we did this last time, you guys did a great job of displaying who took it, who succeeded, and how it also helped in those applicants succeeding. And I think it's going to be even more critically important as they understand the remote aspect and what type of strategies students utilized in this most recent administration and how that could help future administrations improve their outcomes as well. But I'm sure you guys got that down. I just wanted to, I was just interested, but thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. All right, next item is we have Natalie Leonard on law school engagement.
Sure. I want to defer to Paul to start this in case he indicated that he wanted to make a couple of remarks here, and then I will be happy to continue on.
I've forgotten what they were though. I don't think I had anything important, but go ahead and I'll fill in if they come back to me.
Okay, perfect. So I wanted to make sure the committee knew about a number of things that were going on in the area of law school engagement. It's critically important at all times, but especially now, to keep the law schools informed and also to receive their feedback as all of these new initiatives go forward. The first one relates to the accredited law school rules proposal. At the last meeting, the committee approved those rules and for submission to the Board of Trustees, and they were submitted. The Board of Trustees approved the posting of those rules for a 60-day public comment period. They're expected to be posted next week, and the schools will be affirmatively informed when that posting happens. And as public comments are received, they'll be routed back through the Ed Standards Committee if they are received in advance of the board's consideration. In addition, this week there were two meetings, the CS Bars meeting and the Law School Council, in which new members were welcomed for the year. They received an overview much like this one, and also began to think about guidelines that might accompany accredited law school rules and allocation lists and how they can help in producing quick return of the pass-fail lists. Coming up next week are two meetings that will be for registrars only. First meeting in the morning on December 10th, second meeting Law School Assembly 1 to 4. That's primarily the deans of the law schools as well as other administrators. It's a chance for them to interact with the folks in the Office of Admissions, but also the other parts of the bar working on initiatives that may affect them, both to give feedback and receive feedback. This past year, we adopted a new format that we'll keep in this year that's designed to be a much more interactive format, even though it is on Zoom. We expect good participation, and if anyone on the committee wishes to attend, you can let Kim or myself know, and we'll be sure that you're added to the RSVP list. You will need to be on an RSVP list to attend this meeting, either one, and you will be able to come and go freely if you like as a committee member. And then finally, the Law School Dean's e-newsletter would normally be released in December, but in this case, because so many meetings and action would be happening in December, we'll be releasing that newsletter in January, right after the release of bar exam results. And that's what I have. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. And last we have, but not least, we have Lisa Cummins on exam development.
Okay, so it's blank, my screen, but I just have one thing to remind everybody about, and that is for the attorney members of the CBE. You should have already received an email from me just letting you know when you'll be receiving your questions. And the meeting for the question selection will be on December 17th, which is a Thursday at noon. I believe the meeting agenda is going to be posted on Monday, I think. But anyway, I just wanted to remind the attorney members of the CBE about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. So Esther, I'm done with the director's report.
Thank you. We're going to move on to examinations, and that's with James Efting.
I think Lisa's going to start it, aren't you, Lisa?
I believe the first item is the rules revision. That's 0200. So basically, we are proposing that rule 4.90 that has to do with appeals of testing accommodations determinations be revised to clarify and streamline the way we handle our appeals, and pretty much set forth in terms of there's a red line version that's an attachment to the agenda item that shows you what revisions we're proposing. And so if anybody has any questions about any specifics or why we need to do this, I'm open for questions.
Yeah, Kareem here. Lisa, I hope you're doing well. I have a question on this. I remember we discussed this last meeting, and I wasn't very clear on what this meant. So to understand the process, I guess I'll try to replay it and maybe you'll help me better understand it. But the idea is that applicants do appeal, but the issue is that they appeal each accommodation, and that's where they're getting multiple attempts for consideration of the appeal. And so what this will do will consolidate those into one appeal to the CBE. Is that how it's supposed to work?
Well, what happens is, there are applicants when they apply for testing accommodations, they could apply for one, they could apply for a whole slate of accommodations that they feel they need for the exam. So an appeal is after they've received their determination as to, if all of their requests have been denied, or if they've been partially denied, they get some, they not get others. Then they have the ability to appeal within the appeal deadlines of anything that they, still want. And so then what happens is staff will review at the first level and determine whether or not to grant any of those or all of those they're requesting. And then anything that's left over that staff has determined not to grant, then it goes to the committee. So one of the things that was not clear was some applicants have appealed more than one time per exam. And so what we want to encourage applicants to do is to, once they get to the determination, is to, marshal all of their documentation and everything they want to do into one appeal that they get for that particular exam. So, of course, if there is, if they're unsuccessful on the exam and they want to appeal or, for another exam, then that doesn't foreclose, in terms of multiple appeals. We're not talking about for multiple exams, we're talking about for the same administration.
So if a person is granting testing accommodations, that testing accommodation is only granted for that administration, or is it for the lifetime of their administrations until they're successful?
It depends. So there's various, we have another more streamlined procedure for an applicant who wants to ask for the exact same accommodations on a future exam. They're not asking for anything new, anything different, but if they're asking for exactly what they got already, then it's mainly a check the box on the next application. And then we review, and most of the time, and that is for people who have permanent disabilities. And what I'm talking about are, learning disabilities or ADHD, some psychological disabilities, but not for temporary disabilities, and not usually for physical, unless it's something that is a permanent physical disability. So that's, they do have a more streamlined process to ask for the exact same testing accommodations for the next exam, but otherwise they have to, if they want more for the next exam, for example, then they have to file a new petition.
Okay, and then my last question is, I know we're changing the timing of that's provided. So originally it said the first business day of the month, and then now it's going to say 35 days. Yeah. So I guess for me, I'm trying to see if that's like, and I know we get some last minute appeals and accommodation requests. And I think the subcommittee on examination hears those. But I'm just wondering, is that change because we're being inundated, or is that change because of our processes are becoming more streamlined, or what's kind of drawing out that we're having to put this much longer? Because if the test is on the first business day of the month, then that means if the test is administered on the 7th or 8th, then that means there's time to consider it. But then if it's 35 days, now there's a big block of time that people have to prepare their documentation.
Yeah, it's providing us extra time, and it is, what does happen is a lot of times in the subcommittee on examinations can probably tell you, is that a lot of applicants do file their appeals at the deadline. and at or near the deadline. And that does cause staff as well as the subcommittee to, to have a lot of work at that point, because even though you have the deadline on the first of the month currently, that, it's not an immediate turnaround time. I mean, we need to review, we need to send to our consultants if we need to package it up for the committee needs to review it, and then it has to be a sufficient amount of time before the exam in order to implement those accommodations at the test centers. So, generally we would like to have, or we aim for applicants to have their decisions at least a week before the exam. So when you're starting to look at the first of the month and then all the processing time that you need to do in order to get a decision and get ready for that applicant, a week before the exam for any additional accommodations we're talking about, then it just, it makes it pretty difficult.
Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Thank you.
Couple questions or comment to Kareem. I suggested that we select a number of days rather than the first of the month because I think that was adopted when we assumed that the bar exam would always be at the end of the month, but we almost had an exam at the beginning of the month this year, or did we? I've forgotten even. And so the formula didn't work well for all the parts of the month that an exam could fall in. So a specific number of days seem more reasonable. You might quarrel with the length of this period and want to reduce the number, for instance, but I think that's a more a formula that serves us regardless of when we actually schedule a particular exam. And then Lisa, I had a question. We had a public comment this morning to the effect that it wasn't clear to the commenter that they could appeal or re-request things that were denied with regard to a subsequent exam. So I wonder if you or Caroline could address, my understanding is that when you read this rule in connection with the other rules, that they would be allowed to again raise their request for those things that were not already granted. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I think that I'm not sure whether the commenter had read the original item that was posted or the one that was, subsequently posted, but I think that we may have made the language a little more clear in subsection E.
Actually, I don't think it was as clear as it could be if it had to be an E. But my understanding is that when you read the other rules that precede it, they make it clear that you can reapply to attempt to obtain those things that were denied for the current exam for a subsequent exam. You just can't keep coming back to us with regard to the current exam. You get one bite at the apple, not multiple bites. Is that right, Caroline?
I think it does become more clear when you read the rules together, because the rules make clear that you have to file a petition for testing accommodations in connection, prior to a subject examination that you want to take. And that if whatever testing accommodations you're granted for that examination, you can receive again with a more truncated process, like what Lisa was explaining. But if you want to apply for additional accommodations, then you have to file a new petition for testing accommodations. So the committee will always have an opportunity to review any denied new testing accommodations that have not been reviewed by the committee already in connection with, a particular administration of the exam. So, but I understand the confusion. I mean, I think it's hard to just read this rule in isolation and understand that each exam administration, if you're requesting new testing accommodations, has its own petition for testing accommodations associated with it. So, open to your suggestions or other members' suggestions about how to make that more clear, but it does become more clear when you read the rest of the rules.
Yeah, and my final comment is that I do agree with the commenter that there is some value in us reviewing the complete set of the rules regarding testing accommodations at some point to perhaps clarify them, streamline them, There may be some other cases where, or situations where we would want to harmonize them with our current practices. Now, not obviously on today's agenda, but I think that's a good future project when the time allows.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, importantly, I think the intention is not to preclude someone from requesting accommodations that were denied in connection with the previous exam from asking for them again in connection with the future exam and having the committee review any denial associated with that. So that's, you know, that should be clear here that that's not the intention.
Yeah, I have a follow-up if I may, if Paul's finished. So I know we heard this morning that Dr. Agatep is no longer with the committee, and I don't know, for me that was probably the most critical expertise that I would receive from a standpoint of one of my colleagues, and so I know this is going to be a big blow for me and understanding these impacts we get and the requests that we get. My thing is, what is the process for this? I mean, this might be getting away from the policy, but it also ties into the days, because from my understanding, we would typically have the test on the 21st or the 25th within those ranges. So that was typically a 20, if you looked at the first of the month and you had 20-day turnaround to get the approval, the documentation and everything prepared to understand the request and the appeal. But I guess for me, it's understanding, are we expanding our people that we contract with to understand these accommodations, or are we baking in the additional timeline to kind of give us more time? I guess for me, it's like, when it comes to having issues with disabilities and things like that, I don't like to restrict access. I like to increase access as much as possible. And I say that with the understanding that sometimes doctor and physicians get late. Sometimes there's impacts to life as well. And so I just want to be mindful that 35 days might be a little bit excessive, considering we used to do 20 days or 21 days. But I'm trying to get a little bit more clarity on that.
Yeah, but well, it's really not a 20 or 21 day turnaround period, because we have to, give the applicants at least a week to get their decision. But it is a big reason is to give staff and the committee, the subcommittee, more time and a little more breathing room.
Okay, is there a motion for this proposed revision?
So moved.
Any second? That was moved by Ms. Heisinger. Any second?
Kramer.
Thank you, Paul. Roll call vote, please.
Dr. Bolton?
Yes.
Judge Brody?
Yes.
Dr. Kao?
Yes.
Mr. Chen?
Yes.
Mr. Efting?
Yes.
Mr. Gongora?
Yes.
Ms. Heisinger?
Yes.
Mr. Iseri?
Yes.
Mr. Kaplan? Mr. Lawrence?
Yes.
Ms. Pick?
Yes.
Mr. Reyes? Judge Toriaba?
Yes.
Mr. Torres?
Yes.
The motion passes.
Hey, you left me off your list, Kim. Kim, I vote aye.
Sorry.
Thank you. And examination goals, please, Jim.
Yes, so examination goals are on agenda item 0201. They just kind of list of some planned future discussions at future meetings. I'm not sure anything in particular needs to be addressed. Does anybody have any questions about the examination goals?
Without any questions, is there a motion to approve the examination goals?
I will move to approve those lofty goals. Jim.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Who's the second? Sorry.
Mr. Reyes.
Thank you. Roll call,
All
please.
right.
Dr. Bolton,
Yes.
Dr. Cow,
Yes.
Judge Brody,
Yes.
Mr. Chen, Efting,
Yes.
Mr. Gongora,
Yeah.
Ms. Heisinger,
Yes.
Mr. Isari,
Yes.
Mr. Kaplan,
Yes.
Mr. Kramer,
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence,
Yes.
Ms. Peak,
Yes.
Mr. Reyes,
Yes.
Judge Toriaba,
Yes.
Mr. Torres,
Yes.
the motion passes.
Thank you. And we're going to move on to operations and management. Report on the financial impact, please, Tammy and Justin.
Thank you, Esther. So as we all know, back in July 2015, the State Bar's Board of Trustees approved the change in format from a 3-day California bar examination to a 2-day California bar examination. That change was, the first one took place in July of 2017, where we held the first 2-day exam. And as part of that change in format, it had also been requested that the financial impact be evaluated in the 2-day format and see how it was going to possibly save some money for us over a 2-year period and across 4 examinations that we would look at that comparison. The evaluation was intended to identify whether the conversion would actually achieve an anticipated cost savings for us. And the analysis was going to involve review of all costs associated with administering the exam and determine if that format change did indeed have any impact on the various costs, and if so, in which specific areas. There was a report that was attached to this agenda item, which is the financial impact of the modified 2-day California bar examination that explores the differences between the February and July examinations. And we have invited today Justin Ewert, who is our controller from the Office of Finance at the State Bar, who is going to present on this report and the findings that he encountered. Justin.
Thank you, Tammy. Let me share my screen. I have a quick PowerPoint for everyone. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you, everyone. I will provide a brief overview of the report. The report compared these 4 different administrations. So it was 8 total administrations of the exam. This was similar to what Dr. Bolus comparison. And that was the July 2015 to July 2017, 2016 to 2018, and then the February examinations. So the key findings for the report were that the February administration achieved significantly more savings than did the July administration. And this was to do that the February TA applicants remained relatively flat, while the July TA applicants increased significantly. And the TA applicants increased costs in facilities, proctors, which are the 2 largest expenses for the exam. And so I will demonstrate that in a later slide. The State Bar will achieve, or may achieve, but we're going to have an analysis later on that I heard earlier in this meeting that we're going to request of the transition to the online examination that will show that the State Bar does achieve savings towards a more virtual examination. So this chart demonstrates the difference in cost between the 2 exams. It makes sense when you think about how much larger the July exam is than the February exam. The drop in the cost is much more significant, you can see in the February exam. So this is the first exam we took place is the July 2015 exam to July 2017. You'll see that line. It's not very significant. Whereas if you look for the February 2016 exam to the February 2018 exam, that is significant. That first line that I showed you in July, that was only $192,000 in savings, whereas the much more significant drop from 2016 to 2018 is $445,000 in savings. And so you get the same thing from the February 2017 to February 2019. You have a little bit more savings, almost 500,000 in savings, whereas you don't, it's still relatively flat when you compare the July examinations. The total savings examined in this report was about $1.3 million. So if you took the reductions in cost for all the different comparisons, the cumulative amount was 1.3 million, and that was out of about $20 million spent on the examination. So roughly 5% if you take it, look at it that way. The
Justin,
sure.
Is that that amount, is that for 3 administrations that you're talking about, or how many?
It's for 4 administration or 8 administrations, but the 4 comparisons.
Okay, what about it? Does it exclude the February?
No, it's 2 February examinations and 2 July examinations.
Right. Okay.
So both of the February examinations saved roughly $200,000. Or no, the February examinations were much more. They had $450,000 in savings and almost $500,000 in savings. Both the July examinations were roughly $200,000 in savings. And this slide shows the TA application, and not all TA applicants are the same. They vary in what their accommodation is and the length of time of extra hotel time that they have, but we kind of averaged it over the 4 comparisons. But you can see significantly here that you have the TA test takers in July of 2015 was slightly above 350, and then it shoots all the way up to almost over 500 in the July 17 exam. And so this huge increase between the examination population and TA applicants for July, whereas you can see in February, it's a relatively flat line. The TA applicants do not increase significantly. And so since the TA applicants increase proctor costs, they increase facilities costs, they have significant other costs. That is why that the February examination achieves significantly more savings than did the July examination. And this is a slide of this average applicant cost is presented to the CBE. This is taken from previous presentations to the CBE and just shown here on one chart. So all through, you'll see July 15 to February 19, the non-TA applicant cost is that bottom green line. It remains relatively flat. The overall line remains relatively flat, but the TA cost, you see some savings from the February 17 exam down to the July 17 exam, the 2-day format, but the cost per applicant, you can see it's $2,500 up here, where this is down in the $170 range. So this shows that the increased number of TA applicants will impact the cost savings from reducing to 2 days. So the areas of significant savings as detailed in the report are facilities. Those are the hotel, convention centers, fairgrounds, that are required for in-person examinations. The reduction in days for those larger facilities, the convention centers, they went from 4 days to 3 days because those large facilities require 1 day of preparation. And so it went from the first day of preparation and then the 2 days of examination. The TA sites, previously they could be rented, the hotel rooms or conference rooms could be rented for up to 8 days. And since the 2-day change, that was up to 6 days. And like I said, the TA population varies and it varies on the length. So not everybody's going to be testing on that 6th day. In fact, significant amount of people aren't testing on that 6th day, but TA facilities also require 2 days setup. So they require 1 day to set up and then also proctor orientation on that 2nd day. Proctors, the monitoring of the examinations, TAs are impacted significantly. The population will increase the cost of proctors, but reducing the number of days, reduced the number of days we had to pay the proctors. And so we did see savings in the proctors expense line. Grading, the expenses related to the preparation and grading of the examinations, there was one less there were 2 less questions for grading, so that required less graders. And each grader is provided a preparation fee. And so having less graders meant that there was less preparation fees, and each grader is paid per answer file. And so the reduction in the number of answer files needed resulted in some significant cost savings. And then also areas of printing, having to print 2 less questions did have some significant savings, but a more significant savings was renegotiation of these contracts. And so the contract costs came down, and the contracts were renegotiated twice over the 4 different administrations looked at. And this is, I wanted to provide a sample from the report that demonstrates the impact of the TA population. The costs are significant. You see it's 650,000 if you look at the proctors, if you take the TA and non-TA costs, so that's 650,000. And the reduction to the 2-day format, you see the slope on both TA and non-TA is similar. And so we have similar reductions. It's about $50,000 savings in the TA line and $50,000 savings in the non-TA line. If you look at the July administration, which had significantly more TA applicants, the proctor cost for the TA does not decline like the February, but it actually goes up, and we spend more on proctor costs than we did in the 3-day examination. That's because of the significant increase in that population. And so the future of the examination, we will do future studies of the transition to the online examination. As you heard, there was about 300 in-person people at the October administration, and reducing the in-person applicant population obviously will have a significant impact on the future examinations. And continuing having this a successful online examination has long-term impact on savings and could reduce the costs that examinees may need to pay in order to take the examination. So there's my brief slideshow for anybody. I'm now going to open it up to questions.
Justin, this is Donna. Before we move on to questions, I just wanted to clarify one thing for the committee members. When we look at things like what's the total cost per applicant, there's a big factor that's missing in that. And I just wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page on that. The staff of the Office of Admissions is funded by the various fees that are charged. It's a self-funded office. So, moral character staff in part is funded by the moral character fees, application fees. So the staff of the Office of Admission is funded to do the work to prepare for these bar exams, is funded year round by these bar exam fees. And so what's not included in this, what the cost is per applicant, is all of the staff costs that go in year round to determining eligibility, and sort of everything else that's not funded by some other fee, that is a part and parcel of us administering the bar exam. That's a key part of the cost of putting on the exam, and therefore that's a part of what's funded by the fees that we charge. And I just didn't want sort of the data to be the data could be a little bit misleading without that characterization, because you have sort of a sense of what the average cost of the exam is, and it is really considerably more than that when you take into account all of the staff work that gets put into contracting for the facilities, determining eligibility, getting the transcripts from the law school, sort of all of the pieces that are involved. And so I just wanted to add that additional piece of context.
Right. Thank you, Donna. I forgot to mention that. And in the report, I do say that we don't track the costs specifically to each examination, but everybody in admissions directly or indirectly supports those examinations. And the example I gave was the indirect costs and personnel costs in 2018 admissions budget was about $14 million. And so if you just say that only half of those costs are attributed to the February and July examinations, that's still $7.8 $7 million, and the cost that we were talking about in the exam is only $5 million. So the personnel costs are much more than these exam costs, and they do need to be factored in. It's just I wasn't able to attribute staff's time to the individual exams because they administer the February exam, the July exam, the first year exams, and then the biannual specialization exam.
And hey, this is Robbie and Donna. Maybe this comment or question is best directed to you. I guess I wanted to highlight, I think that these savings, if there are any, we'd have to view as temporary, assuming that there is a vaccine coming in the new year and the pandemic is coming to an end. I'm assuming that all things being equal, the bar would prefer that we administer the bar exam in whatever form it's going to be in the future, in the way that we've done it in the past, in a controlled environment where we can better ensure the integrity of the exam. Would you agree, Donna, or are you looking at the future, at least from where you sit today, in a different way?
So I think this is absolutely going to be the subject of ongoing discussions with the Supreme Court. I think, as with everything else during the pandemic, we have learned a lot about what can be done remotely and what can't be done as effectively remotely. And so I wouldn't, right, if I were just speculating, I wouldn't be surprised if the future of the bar exam included some sort of more hybrid remote and in-person. And that's literally me speculating, not having had a conversation with anybody. But this will absolutely be the subject of ongoing discussions with the court. So I think the answer, though, in part, Robbie, is you're right. We don't know what, and I fully expect the remote exam itself to identify savings. We don't know if these are temporary or not, because the bar exam could go back to a fully in-person exam as the pandemic is over. So it is to be determined. But one of the reasons that I did want to also mention the admissions costs, the staffing function, as we're looking at the cost of administering the bar exam per applicant, is that one of the things that Amy and I have been talking about is the need to do a little right sizing of the Office of Admissions. I think we could benefit from, an additional, and I don't know the numbers, but, let's just say an additional person in eligibility in a couple of our different units with testing accommodations across the bar, so we can eliminate we can reduce the timelines of processing the matters and be able to be more responsive to the applicants as they are reaching out to us, as a bar exam is coming up upon us. So I think we're going to want to do that no matter what, is add some additional staff to the office, which would ultimately increase the overall staffing part of the costs if we have a decrease attributable to any sort of ongoing remote exam, or certainly the decreases that Justin pointed to with a 2-day exam. Those could offset some of those increased staffing costs.
So Donna, then again, and now I'm going to reverse myself and say, in the very short term, would your answer to those that say, well, in the short term for the next exam, because it is remote and you're not renting facilities, you should be charging less for the exam? On its face, that sounds like an argument that could be made. Would your answer be, no, that's not true, because at the end of the day, our costs are the same? Or yes, let's charge $100 less because at the end of the day, our overall costs are less?
So I think that goes to the point that Amy was making earlier, which is we can't fully categorize yet the overall cost of administering the remote exam. It includes things not things like, you know, the facilities that we use for the exam, not only those, but things like the proctors that we have. We had to hire less proctors to administer the exam, but we have to hire proctors now for the review of the videos that were generated during the exams. And so getting a sense of how that pencils out in the end is something that we just haven't had the opportunity to do yet. So I don't know that we'll be in a position to say that their cost for the February exam should be reduced by X dollars. I just don't think we have the data yet. It's something that we will be working as expeditiously as possible to get our arms around. But you know, with that plus the sort of additional sort of staff resources, you know, I just don't think we're going to be in a position immediately to make that call.
And I do want to highlight one thing also in response to that, and that is that some costs are not going away, regardless of the administration, you know, whether it's online or in person. For example, the report specifies this. Justin included the TA consultants as an example. You know, the TA consultants, if anything, those costs are going up, not because we're paying more, but because there's a greater need. You know, there's the TA process itself has not changed, aside from the volume of applications that we're getting, which means that we need more access to TA consultants. And in the reports that we've typically brought to the committee on the cost of the exam, those costs have never been incorporated, which is why Justin's report is more comprehensive. It factored some of that in there too. So I just want to highlight that despite the modality, that those TA costs are going to be ongoing from one exam to the next.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. I had forgotten that point, which is an incredibly important point. So part of the costs of administering the exam other parts of it haven't been factored in what we present to the committee, and so it doesn't give a full example, full understanding of what the administration per examinee is.
Okay, and this is Robbie again, and you know, Amy, of course, you know, I don't doubt any of that, but there is that sentiment out there that I think we need to either acknowledge it or, you know, be ready with facts and figures that, you know, that all the things that we're talking about are fixed costs from bar to bar, our staffing and this and that. I know there are added costs with our new exam soft and review of the tapes and stuff, but I think, you know, as Tammy will highlight the significant cost that we don't have with our facilities and our many proctors at each site. You know, if there's a savings there in the very short term for the exam that's coming up, then you know, it's something to either talk about or address to our applicants so they understand why the price is the same or is it?
So, Robbie, you know, it is something that we've discussed internally, but I think we need more than one exam. You know, this is our first, you know, I'm going to use air quotes, July exam, you know, right. Happened in October. And we also had, this is going to be our first February exam. And so we, you know, you can see in this report, it took 4 exam cycles to really get a sense of what the trend is when it comes to the cost, expenditure and savings. And so, but it is something that we need to look at. Can moving the modality to an online exam lead to cost savings in the price of the bar exam? It's definitely something that we're keeping our eyes on as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
If I could just mention one thing too, is that if, you know, regardless of how long the online exam continues, let's say it did continue past the pandemic, you know, there are additional costs and changes to how we administer an exam for in-person based on the pandemic. So if the pandemic is, you know, in our past and we're moving on with the way we normally would, we would go back to doing things in person in the same way that we did before. So there is some comparisons there that we'll have to look at, because things will change based on what we're required to do now because of the pandemic versus what we normally do when there isn't a pandemic. So I just want to mention that, because PPE has definitely been a major aspect of the October exam and will be for February as well.
Yes, and I know, I know that staff is aware of all this. I just wanted to bring it out there and, make sure, everybody knows, including our public members, that we're cognizant of these, ongoing changes. And, I appreciate your comments. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you for the report. On to approval of the O&M goals with Alex.
Oh, Ms. Chair, we need to take a motion for.
We need a motion on the report. Okay. Is there a motion to approve the report?
I'll second Dr. Bolton's motion to approve that report.
Thank you, Robbie. Roll call.
Sorry, can I correct one thing? I'm so sorry. The motion is to receive and file the report.
Oh, yes. I'll second Dr. Bolton's motion to receive and file that report.
Roll call vote, please.
Dr. Bolton,
Yes.
Judge Brody,
Yes.
Dr. Cow, Mr. Chen, Mr. Efting, can you please unmute your mic, please?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Gongora,
Yes.
Ms. Heisinger,
Yes.
Mr. Iseri,
Yes.
Mr. Kaplan,
Yes.
Mr. Kramer,
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence,
Yes.
Ms. Pick,
Yes.
Mr. Reyes,
Yes.
Judge Toriaba,
Yes.
Does the motion pass?
Yes, the motion passes. I'm sorry, I'm having difficulty with my internet, so I say the motion passes.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to move on to the goals. Alex?
Yes.
Sorry, but are we going to take a break after the goals, Esther?
We can. I mean, I did send a.
I think we should have a little break.
Okay, well, to take a 5-minute break since lunch is around the corner after goals.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'll just briefly mention, you see the goals there listed and in 0301. And for one, we just accomplished one of those goals with the report. So unless anybody has any questions or comments about the goals, I'll open it up to that.
I have a question, Mr. Lawrence. I actually have never asked this question, but I'm wondering, does the state bar have a hardship waiver for applicants that are going to take the tests, but of course can't afford the fees?
No, we don't. Sorry, no.
Okay.
It also, but let me just say that the provisional licensure application is probably the closest to something like a waiver, where there is a 3-tiered kind of application fee. But as for the first year exam or the bar exam or the registration as a law student, we do not have waivers for those.
So would it be too soon? I mean, considering we just got a presentation on cost savings, would it be too soon to potentially look into a hardship program that could work on that tiered basis?
I think, where we landed on this based on the last presentation was that we need some time to look at the costs in general. I mean, it is something that we could strive to do as we evaluate the costs, but we need more than one exam cycle per each exam. So for example, this bar exam was the first time that we did an online exam with what is potentially the July population. This coming February is our next one. And so, you know, it will give us a better sense of where we're at with our cost expenditures, but it usually takes more than one exam cycle to determine that. I mean, even in this presentation, we got to see that the two waves even had differences between each other. So it takes more than one exam to reach those types of conclusions. But we definitely want to, if we are incurring a cost savings, this is something that we want to, you know, bring, trickle down to our applicants, and maybe it's and it could be through two means. One is the suggestion that you're making, which is a tiered system, or an overall, you know, application cost decrease to all applicants. So it's just something that we'll have to keep our eye on.
So can we put it as a part of the goal to just evaluate for 2021? Since we'll have this administration February and then the next year's, and then if we don't, we could kick it down to 2022, but just that we have it on record.
I mentioned that January is our planning meeting, so we could bring that suggestion to the planning meeting in January, because that's when we revise our goals as a team.
Oh, but for this committee, would that be appropriate or not appropriate at this time?
Yeah, so this committee is going to look at the goals in January. We could add it then, Kareem.
Okay, I just remember in the past we've made some edits to goals, so I was just wondering when the right time would do that.
Okay. Alex, it's up to you. Do you want to add that as a goal now?
Sure, we can add it as a goal. Like I think what was said earlier is that you know, we've modified goals. This is my first time being the chair of this particular subcommittee, but I know that with the other ed standards, you know, goals have sort of morphed a little bit for the right reasons, changed, et cetera, over time. So we can add it.
I'm sorry, Alex, the added goal would be to look at the idea of a tiered fee structure based on need. Was that the idea?
Well, I think, you know, Kareem should make the motion to add that goal in state.
What was your idea, Mr. Gongora?
So definitely with hearing Amy's commentary to evaluate a tiered hardship program for first year law exam and bar applicants, maybe aligned with the provisional license tiered fee waiver program. But just that if there's cost savings, then we should probably loop that into a way that we could increase access to the bar and offset some of the cost.
Yeah, I think Amy was using the provisional licensure program as an example, but the categories wouldn't work to align that. But I think the concept is fine, that we would, you know, the committee would want to ensure that we evaluate a tiered fee structure based on need.
Yes. Okay. Well, with the idea that we'll also be looking at a tier structure based on need, looking at it as one of our goals, I'll make that motion to approve the goals as amended, Mr. Lawrence.
Thank you. Any
I'll second.
Who was
Second
that?
Thank you, Mr. Brody.
Gongora, I believe.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Dr. Bolton,
Yes.
Judge Brody,
Yes.
Dr. Cow,
Yes.
Mr. Chen, Mr. Afting,
Yes.
Mr. Gongora, Ms. Heisinger,
Yes.
Mr. Iseri,
Yes.
Mr. Kaplan,
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence,
Yes.
okay, Mr. Kramer,
Yes.
Ms. Pick,
Yes.
Mr. Reyes,
Yes.
Judge Toriaba,
Yes.
Mr. Torres,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. So right now it's 11:14. Let's come back at 11:20 for a quick break and we will resume. And chances are we're going to have a working lunch because we have a long agenda today. So just be prepared. We'll have our break right now. Thank you.
I'm here. Hey,
Hey,
Rob.
Amy, where is our new judge?
He was not able to attend today,
Oh.
Judge Herman. Mhm.
Yeah, because I think I missed him last time, so.
Yes, he had a conflict that he informed us of.
Okay, so I guess.
I thought he was here last time for a bit.
Yeah, I think I missed him. So it looks like we have 2 openings actually then, huh?
I think he was avoiding you, Mr. Brody.
Yeah, well, Torres was avoiding me as well, but I heard he showed up today. I don't see him
I
anywhere.
had court this morning.
Yeah, Torres, he's a handful. That's the problem. How are you, David?
I'm good. I'm really busy. I've been in jury trial for 3 consecutive months. It's my 4th homicide of the year.
Wait, so you're what court are you in that's open to jury trials?
Kern, I did I tried a homicide in
Excuse me to interrupt. I just wanted to remind you we are in open session.
Yeah, I think that's okay. We're not going to mention any names, or is that okay, David? I'm curious to know how your court is handling jury trials in these COVID environment. Okay.
And we will be starting with educational standards with Paul Kramer and Natalie Leonard.
Okay, we'll get started here. The first item is 0400, consideration of a response to notice of noncompliance with Rule 4.160N, which is our minimum cumulative bar exam passage rate standard. And this one relates to John F. Kennedy School of Law. It will be followed by 2 others. So the foundational comments I make will apply to all of them, with only the facts differing a little bit. So again, these are all relate to failures to maintain the minimum cumulative bar exam passage rate, which is 40% or more. That's our standard found in Rule 4.160N. Failures to comply are treated under our noncompliance procedure, which is found in Rule 4.170 and following. The first step in that process is the issuance of notices of noncompliance, which we voted to issue in August. The schools were allowed an opportunity to respond with a demonstration that they are in compliance. Those responses come back to the CBE to determine whether they are satisfactory or not. If we find the responses are unsatisfactory, we must schedule an inspection by the senior executive within 60 days. The senior executive conducts that inspection and then reports back to us at a future meeting. After reviewing those reports, we determine whether the school is in compliance or should be placed on probation or have its accreditation terminated. John F. Kennedy School of Law's NPR for this year is 39.7%. As with many schools, its NPR has recently declined. It was 48.8% in 2018 and 44.4% in 2019. Its response describes steps that it is taking or will take to improve the performance of its graduates and alumni on the bar exam. They're summarized at the bottom of page 2 and the top of page 3 of the staff report. JFK does not dispute that its NPR is below our standard. Staff recommends that the committee find the response unsatisfactory and schedule the inspection. A proposed motion to that effect is found at page 4 of the staff report. Natalie, if you could explain your tentative plan for the inspections, should we authorize those? Appreciate that.
Sure. So in line with the way that they were conducted in the past, the inspection is a little bit different for the NPR versus other areas. Normally, you're confirming something that you can see. Here, the NPR noncompliance is actually stipulated, but it's an opportunity for the committee to better understand the plan that is in place and how the plan is working. And in particular, with this school, the school is getting ready to merge with North Central University effective January. And I think it's worthy to note that their submissions now have been joint, and we can see North Central University participating in the process, and the dean is here today if there are any questions. It would be the staff proposal to set an inspection as soon as possible. I understand that normally the bar results from a July bar exam would be available right now, but they should be available by the time the committee returns in January. I would recommend proceeding with the inspection rather than waiting for those results, knowing that you will see those results along with an inspection report. A change of this type would be something that would generally be long-term for the schools, and though adjustments might be made based on these specific results, their plan should be in place and should be subject to normal adjustments going forward, and it wouldn't be a reason to delay. The other element to weigh is a public protection element. You want to get through this process to establish the plan for the school so that can be communicated not only to the public, but in particular to prospective students. So when students are considering this school or any other school, it's helpful for them to know what the committee thinks is the appropriate plan for this school. We can do an informal calculation, particularly with this school being very close to the 40% amount. And that's something that can be included when this returns to the committee, whether that be January or its subsequent meeting.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Paul, this is Robbie. Hey, I want to first thank you for taking the laboring oar from Alex Lawrence. I mean, this is a weighty job, and wow, I'm so glad to see you've picked it up for the CBE, helping Natalie out. I am prepared to make the motion. Do you want me to wait until you've done the other schools because it's very similar, or do you want to do them one at a time?
Well, does anyone have a preference to wait and do all three together, or?
They're very similar, and I have a feeling the consensus is also going to be similar, but
I think that's appropriate, but I have some comments that I.
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Or Paul. Go ahead, Mr. Gongorov.
Okay, thank you, Robbie. My only thing is, this is kind of the ripple of the change that we saw. So I think it's going to be interesting for us to forecast, or even, I mean, we can't forecast, but look at what the new bar exam score is going to do to the NPR, and also looking at that. I guess we have 3 schools that are experiencing this. So that's a comment that I'm just making, just looking at it from the big picture. On one of the schools, they received several. I don't know if it's this school, Natalie, but one of them's going to be merging, and I think it was as a site inspection. So it might not be a part of this 3 schools we want to approve. But I just saw a lot of recommendations on and for me on this. I think, is it the San Francisco Law School?
That's correct. So the merging school is this one, JFK. San Francisco Law School is also the subject of an inspection here. And all the way along, we can consider and present to you all of those circumstances. And we are continuing to track the new cut score and the PLL to be able to fold that into recommendations for you and also your discussion.
I appreciate that. I know you're going to handle all of that. I'm just kind of taking out of my brain because on on this particular school, I was wondering if we could get like a 6-month update. I know we've requested that in the past of schools that have been inspected for non-compliance or for inspection. But my reasoning is that there's a series of things that they haven't updated that have been outdated for quite some time. And so I just want to make sure that we have like a 6-month status update just to ensure they're in compliance.
I do think that that is already a part of the recommendation, and I'm glad to hear that it's endorsed by you as well. In the case of JFK, it's soon to be part of North Central, just to be clear, they had a successful inspection. Their next inspection is due in 2022. So they are in full compliance, and they have addressed all of the recommendations that were part of their prior inspection some years ago.
Okay, and that's because I'm missing one. I have all my PDFs open and I'm just trying to go through them. And so I couldn't identify which school is, but there was, so which school is it? Is it the San Jose one that I'm looking for the 6-month update?
That would be San Francisco Law School.
Okay, good. Okay. Other than that, I have no other concerns. That's the only school that I saw. I would like to see some a status update, but since that's already recommended, then I guess Mr. Brody's motion will be effective.
So, Paul, should I just go ahead one at a time? I mean, I can do it quickly.
Well, okay, we haven't talked about, I just need to mention the facts with the other two first.
Oh,
let me do
okay,
that.
go ahead then. Well, why don't you do that, and then I'll try to craft my motion that's comprehensive.
Okay, so Lincoln, the second law school, and this is 0401, is Lincoln Law School, San Jose. They've also experienced a decline in their NPR in recent years. They were at 55.4% in 2018, 44% in 2019, and this year they are at 30.9%. Their response attributes some of the decline to their shifting from a mandated bar preparation work on their students' part to a student-directed regime, and they suspect that the students, not having somebody riding herd on them, perhaps didn't achieve the same level and depth of preparation as they had in the past, and therefore their performance was reduced. They're returning to their mandatory program, and if you need more details, that's again on pages 2 and 3 of the staff report. They do not dispute that their NPR is currently below our standard. In their response, they request that we postpone any further action on this until we get the July, or rather the October 2020 bar results, and they also suggest we should wait as long as when we go back to giving the bar exam in person. But our regulation doesn't allow for that unless we were to apply one of our waiver provisions, which really require us to find that there are extraordinary circumstances. And staff does not recommend that we do that, but rather we go ahead, as Natalie said a few minutes ago, and conduct the inspection at which we can talk with them in more detail about their plans to improve their students' performance, and then come back to us to decide what we want to do going forward. So again, there's a motion for that. It's nearly identical to the one for JFK and the one that I will speak to next at page 4 of the staff report. The final school is the San Francisco Law School, which is also the subject of an inspection report, which we'll get to after we finish these 3 items. That's attached, or that's item O-402. Their NPR has declined from 46.2% in 2018 to 41.7% in 2019 and 36% this year. They also do not dispute the statistics or that they are currently not in compliance, and they describe various measures that they are taking to support and improve their students' performance as well. Again, staff recommends that we find that their response is unsatisfactory and we schedule the inspection. Proposed motion is found at page 4 of the staff report. So Robbery, if you want to make a motion, I would recommend for ease of use that you move to adopt the proposed motions that are in the staff reports.
Yes. So
But first, let me ask, do we have any questions about these other two schools before we do that?
okay.
Okay, no questions, I guess. So go ahead.
All right. So I'm going to make a motion that the responses with respect to Lincoln Law School, John F. Kennedy School of Law, and San Francisco Law School to the notices of noncompliance with Rule 4.1.60N be received and filed, and that the committee find that the responses are unsatisfactory because they do not establish the law school's compliance with said rule, and further move that remote inspections be scheduled for these law schools within 60 days to determine whether or not the schools are in compliance with said rule, and if not, to allow the schools an opportunity to further explain their plans and timing to return to compliance, including the evidence upon which the plans are based. If the schools decline to timely participate in an inspection, the committee will proceed with the information before it for each school. Any second?
This is
I'll
Bethany.
second
I'll
that.
second it.
Okay, Bethany seconded.
Roll call vote, please.
Dr. Bolton,
Yes.
Judge Brody,
Yes.
Dr. Cow,
Yes.
Mr. Chen, Mr. Efting,
Yes.
Mr. Gongora,
Yes.
Ms. Heisinger,
Yes.
Mr. Iseri,
Yes.
Mr. Kaplan,
Yes.
Mr. Kramer,
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence,
Yes.
Ms. Peak,
Yes.
Mr. Reyes,
Yes.
Judge Toriyaba,
Yes.
Mr. Torres,
Yes.
the motion passes.
Okay, thank you. The next item is 0403. That's the periodic inspection report of San Francisco Law School, which is an accredited law school with campuses now in Emeryville and San Diego. A periodic inspection was partially completed in 2017, but for various reasons, including personnel changes and a facility move, it could not be completed until this year. Heather Georgakis is one of our consultants for these inspections. She led the inspection team, which also included our committee member, Alex Chan, and Dean Mitchell Winnick of Monterey College of Law. He participated in the Emeryville portion, and Dean Robert Humphreys of Humphreys University, who participated in the San Diego portion. I want to thank all of them for their efforts in conducting the inspection and providing the report. The details of the inspection and the inspection report are in our staff report. About 19 recommendations were made to ensure compliance with our rules, and there were 3 optional recommendations that were also made by the inspection team. Many of those were addressed to staff satisfaction, but some work does remain to be completed. And due to the pandemic and staffing issues at the school has not been able to meet targets that it has set for itself. To assure that the work is completed, staff recommends that periodic progress reports be required by each May 15 and November 15 until the next periodic inspection is completed, and that the next inspection be set for the winter of 2022. A motion to that effect is found on page 9. Does anyone have any questions about any of the specifics of the recommendations or any other aspect of this inspection? Seeing none, we're open to to a motion.
Paul, this is Robbie. If there's no, I guess you have high hopes that this is going to happen. I'll make the motion if you do. You do, Paul?
So it's condition,
Yeah.
well,
I
I
wonder-
would recommend adopting the motion if that's what you
Okay.
mean.
All right. If you do, then I'll make this motion that the 2020 periodic inspection report of San Francisco Law School be received and filed, along with the law school's response to that report dated September 24th, 2020, and further update dated November 13th, 2020, that the school be required to provide an update as to each recommendation identified in the inspection report by May 15th and November 15th of each year until the school's next periodic inspection is completed, and that the school's accreditation be continued and the next inspection set for winter 2022, unless modified by the committee's findings as to the school's progress related to these recommendations, the school's minimum cumulative 5-year bar examination passage rate, or other compliance issues.
Second.
Second by Mr. Lawrence.
Kim?
Dr. Bolton,
Yes.
Judge Brody,
Yes.
Dr. Cow,
Yes.
Mr. Chen, Mr. Acting,
Yes.
Mr. Gongora,
Yes.
Ms. Heisinger,
Yes.
Mr. Iseri,
Yes.
Mr. Kaplan,
Yes.
Mr. Kramer,
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence,
Yes.
Ms. Peak,
Yes.
Mr. Reyes,
Yes.
Judge Torriaba,
Yes.
Mr. Torres,
Yes.
the motion passes.
Thank you. Our next item is action on a petition for acquiescence to a non-JD program. It's for the Concord Law School Executive JD program. It's attachment, or rather item 0404, or O-404, I'm sorry. Concord's Executive JD program is not new to us. We acquiesced to it back when it was created in 1999, when Concord was a registered law school. But Concord recently became an accredited school, and it is necessary for it again to ask for our acquiescence. Nothing has changed about the program to our knowledge. Staff finds that it will not detract from the school's ability to maintain its accredited JD program. And that is the limit of our review. We do not approve the curriculum or other aspects of a non-JD program. Concord has committed to making the appropriate disclosures in its communications. And staff recommends that we renew our acquiescence. An appropriate motion is found at page 4 of the staff report. Any questions? Comments?
Paul and Natalie, can you remind me and us, do people sign up for this program and think that this qualifies them to sit for the bar exam? At first,
Well,
it's
if they read the disclosures, they wouldn't,
But
because
if
that
they-
makes it clear.
But how about if they don't read them? That doesn't it sound like it's a path to becoming a lawyer?
As a practical matter at this school, I can tell you the procedure just quickly. They also have their own entrance exam that students take, and part of the way that that admission is determined is that a certain score is required for the JD program and a lesser score for this program. So they will clearly be told that they have not been accepted to the JD program. They may be offered this opportunity, which is different. They explain how so, and there is a disclosure that they must sign that very clearly states that it does not qualify them to take the bar exam. So with that process, I think that it probably generally has been clear to the students.
But you know, Paul, isn't there something about calling yourself Concord Law School that smacks of it's kind of like unauthorized practice of law that we deal with on another committee. Doesn't the sound of it, in terms of public protection, which is kind of what we're all about on CBE? I don't know.
Well, yeah, the name may strike you as remarkably close. It might even suggest to you that you can directly become a large law firm partner if you get this degree. But we acquiesced in the past. They are required to give a disclosure. I don't know, Natalie, any thoughts about making them rename it? Which I guess is what Robbie's getting at.
Well, I just, Natalie, I know you can be, I know you require schools to toe the line, but gosh, I just think that somebody, fishing around just out of the military or looking for a program to get into, gosh, I haven't looked at their admission materials, but it just seems at first blush, if I didn't know any better, I would think, wow, this is a way for me to go to law school.
Well, I'm not certain. It might be a question for general counsel to understand what level of authority the committee can exercise over a name. I will say that I do think there is the potential for some confusion. So for example, in the business school world, and Alex Lawrence may know better than I, often an executive MBA connotes an MBA conducted for working individuals or conducted in a night program, but with the same standards and privileges. Whereas here, executive would connote not qualifying for the same standards and privileges. So I do think your point is well taken. And it is something that we could look into through council to see what possibilities might be available.
Natalie, if this is not a path to the bar, why is this before the CBE?
Well, primarily the ABA does this as well. It's essentially an opportunity for you to verify that the addition of these programs doesn't detract from the JD program, that they will still be able to discharge their compliance responsibilities through the JD.
So this is a school that also does offer a JD program.
Yes.
Are many of the classes the same?
Some of the classes are the same. Actually, ultimately, all of the EJD classes are similar to Concord, with the exception of one additional professional ethics course.
Wow. Alex Lawrence, what do you have to say? Should I just like clamps?
Yeah, I suggest a clamp.
Is that possible?
It's impossible. It's possible.
I think Natalie was spot on, at least coming from the graduate business education side. There is sort of like, for people who are applying to say like an executive program, there is that expectation of, at a certain career level, even though across all of our different programs, executive, part-time, full-time, they still have sort of the same access to resources, even though the classes and the curriculum of the content is a little bit more advanced, say, for the executive versus sort of the junior participants in our program. So using your words, I think, you may want to clamp it, but that's my input.
All right. Well, between Torres and Lawrence, I'm sufficiently clamped. I'm so clamped that I'm going to make the motion.
Really quickly though, Robbie, I'm not going to offset your motion. I just want to highlight how serious those disclosures are in informing the public. And that's kind of what I was pointing to in the previous inspections, that if the content isn't updated regularly, then it may present a wrong idea of what could outcome from these type of degrees. So I hear you, and I'm very, I don't know if we can have council look into disclosures and making those a bit more rigorous, or what we could do there, but I think the disclosure process is where the meat is, and kind of what you were getting to.
And I can chime in, Kareem. This is Ken Holloway. I think the issue here, which was highlighted, is that the issue before the committee is really the thumbs up, thumbs down on the acquiescence. And that's sort of where I guess the clamping discussion came in. But certainly look at, we can certainly look a little further into those issues with naming or with disclosures and where, if anywhere, the committee can take a look moving forward, sort of separately from that thumbs up, thumbs down on acquiescing to it, not influencing the JD program in terms of what's before you right now.
Yeah, I'm going to make the motion, but I think I would say for the future, if you're going to call yourself the Alex Chan School of Law and you do not offer a law degree or a path to the bar exam, then that's something we should look at, Alex Chan. In the meantime, though, let me make this motion that Concord Law School's application for acquiescence to its executive JD program, a non-bar qualifying program, be received and filed, and that the request for continuing acquiescence be granted. Any second?
I'll second that. I'll second.
Second by Mr. Torres, who clamped me.
Dr. Bolton,
No.
Judge Brody,
Yes.
Dr. Cow,
Yes.
Mr. Chen, Mr. Efting,
Yes.
Mr. Gongora,
Yes.
Ms. Heisinger,
Yes.
Mr. Iseri,
Yes.
Mr. Kaplan, Mr. Kramer,
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence,
Yes.
Ms. Peak,
Yes.
Mr. Reyes,
Yes.
Judge Torioba,
Yes.
Mr. Torres,
Yes.
the motion passes.
Okay, our next item is 0405. It's a request for a one-time waiver of the 84-month time limit to complete JD requirements under guideline 6.5A for Pacific Coast University School of Law. We're speaking of the student in question here. We call him or her just the student for privacy reasons. This is a case of drop balls. The student in question began law studies in 2010. On a normal timeline, he or she would have completed studies in 2014. It's a 4-year program. The student withdrew from the program in 2012 after failing a class and grieving from the recent death of one of his or her children. The student was readmitted to the program in 2016 and was awarded a JD degree in 2019, which is 108 months after beginning studies, or more than the 84-month time limit that our rules require someone to complete their studies within. The school should have realized that a waiver of the requirement was required prior to readmitting the student in 2016. They did not request a waiver until 9 months before the student completed the program. For reasons that are not clear, the request was never forwarded to the committee, nor did the school follow up to track the progress of that request. The lack of a waiver was noticed in 2020 as the student applied to take the bar exam. Both the law school and the bar have made administrative changes to reduce the possibility of this happening again. Without this waiver, the student would have to repeat much of his or her legal education. In the past, we've granted waivers for periods of as long as 3 years. Here, 2 years is the request. Staff recommends that we grant the request, and there is an appropriate motion on page 4 of the staff report. I'll note that in our proposed new rules, which will be going out for comment soon, we would delegate these waivers, determination of them, to the law schools themselves. We have some standards in the rules, but we would not be seeing these in the future if those rules take effect.
I'd so move with regard to the proposed motion. I think it's fair under the circumstances.
This is Bethany. I'll second.
Okay, did anyone have questions or comments before we vote?
No question.
None. Kim?
Dr. Bolton,
Yes.
Judge Brody,
Yes.
Dr. Kao,
Yes.
Mr. Chen, Mr. Efting,
Yes.
Mr. Gongora, Ms. Heisinger,
Yes.
Mr. Iseri,
Yes.
Mr. Kaplan,
Yes.
Mr. Kramer,
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence,
Yes.
Dick,
Yes.
Mr. Reyes,
Yes.
Judge Toriaba,
Yes.
Mr. Torres,
Yes.
the motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Next is item O-406. Are you seeing a share on your screens?
Yes.
Okay. I'll get to this in a minute, but this illustrates a couple of the points I'm going to discuss. This is an action on application for accreditation of the California School of Law, which is an online distance learning, currently a registered unaccredited school, now applying for accreditation. It was founded in 2005. It enrolled its first class in 2007 and had its first graduates in 2011. Staff has reviewed its application and finds that it substantially complies with the requirements of an accredited law school, but calling one area to our attention, which is attrition. One of the standards that applies to accredited schools is Rule 4.160H, which you see on the screen, requiring the law school to not admit any student who is obviously unqualified or who does not appear to have a reasonable prospect of completing the degree program. And so what staff flagged was their attrition rate between the first and subsequent years. Below the rule excerpt, I have a table that I pulled from their online disclosure form that's posted on their website. It was updated in the last couple of days to include the 2020 column. But if you see, if you look at the 2017 column, and you see that there were 18 first years, and you look at the next line in the 2018 column, and you see that there are only 5 second years. That's an attrition rate of 18 starting as first years and only 5 making it to the second year. You look at between 2018 and 2019, 41 first years in 2018 yielded 3 second years in 2019. In 2019, 28 first years gave rise to 3, again, second years in 2020. So that's a pretty steep attrition rate. And you have to wonder at least whether or not that meets the standard of admitting people who have a reasonable prospect of completing the degree program. Now, we don't resolve that today, but I think it's something that needs to be discussed with the school before they can move forward to the step of being either provisionally or fully accredited. Now, as far as process goes, we have several options. They're highlighted on page 2 of the staff report, and I'll summarize them for you. First would be to tell the school that they don't substantially comply with the requirements and suggest that they withdraw their application. They may not do that, in which case, or we can also choose to schedule an inspection, which will result in a report back to us about their compliance, after which we would determine whether to provisionally or fully accredit them or to deny accreditation. And we could also just call for more information and put the question over to a future meeting, or we could deny the application outright today. To me, the choice between scheduling an inspection and calling for more information and putting over the item doesn't matter, but I don't think we achieve much by putting the item over. The inspection seems the proper place to discuss our concerns about their attrition rate and what their plans are, and how they're going to address that, and how for them to make a case that they can meet that one standard that I've highlighted. It's also where all of the other aspects of their compliance with our rules would be tested. Right now, all we have is kind of a paper demonstration that staff has reviewed on paper, but the inspection would result in a more in-depth examination of all those issues. So my recommendation would be that we go to the schedule and inspection step. It doesn't put them in the status of provisionally accredited. That's to be determined later. But it does move the process forward. And if they are going to be able to convince us that they should be provisionally accredited, they'll be one step further down that road. Again, calling for more information and putting it over would still mean that once we got all the information, we were convinced, then we would still have to go through the inspection steps. So I think it would be just adding extra time to the process that wouldn't serve any particularly useful purpose in this case. Any questions or comments?
I have a comment. I agree with you, Paul. Looking at this enrollment data for 3 years, one would get the impression that this school is operating solely on first-year students. That's where they're making their money, and not doing a service to the students who enroll. So, I don't know how, I forgot what you said about how long they've been in existence, and
2005, first graduates in 2011.
And when did this type of trend begin?
I didn't take the data all the way back to the beginning, but we can get that information. I can tell you a couple of quick things about the school that might give some context. The first one is that these schools are allowed to admit students that meet the pre-legal requirements, but without a bachelor's degree. And this school accepts more than most, and most do not succeed after the first. This school also has a unique element, a capstone course in the first year, and it has quite a deterrent effect, even among students that have done well throughout the year. And then they may be asked to withdraw before taking the first year. So those are two unique aspects of this school. Prior to the school applying, I did have a conversation with them to let them know that this might be a question that the committee may have, and they should include a significant amount of information in the application. They put some information, but probably not more than other schools would have. So I would think that this would be the trend that we're likely to see if we go back to the beginning, and that can certainly be done.
And registered schools are not subject to the same standards as accredited schools, correct?
Right, they do have different standards. And to be clear, there's not a specific retention requirement. And in fact, if someone does not appear to be capable of completing the degree program, the school does have a responsibility to dismiss them. But the school is required to have a sound admissions policy and a sound educational policy. And with this level of attrition, I wanted to bring it to the attention of the committee to determine if sound policies would engender these results.
Do we know that that is attrition in terms of grades, or do we know that the percentage of individuals, for example, if you've got 41 coming in 2018 and in 2019 only 3, so whatever happened to the other 38? What is the percentage of those that flunked out versus the percentage that decided that law just wasn't for them? We don't have that information.
I presume they would discuss that with us during the inspection.
Yeah, and we do have some information. A thumbnail number would be about 50%. But part of what we don't know is we also see students withdraw in advance of a dismissal to preserve their records. And so a withdrawal does not always connote a truly voluntary choice.
And what type of accreditation are they seeking right now?
They are currently a registered school and they hope to seek possibly provisional accreditation or ideally full accreditation. The other thing that this raises for the committee to think about is that this school will be required to maintain a 40% MPR, and they do that at this moment. But with these very tiny levels of student population and that number being very close to 40, query how what is likely to happen, how stable is that number, or also what will happen when the first year law students exam is not a gatekeeper for this school any longer. Will this larger cohort come forward or not? And what will that do to the MPR? You may decide that that is a risk that accrues to the school, but it's something that's a little bit different than what you saw in the first several accreditation applications that were presented to you for the online schools. So I wanted to make it available for discussion.
Okay. This is Robbie. I'm ready to make a motion on 0407. Or I'm sorry, 0406. Was there anything else? So, Paul, I will make a motion. Hold on, I just lost the text on the application for accreditation. Hold on. This is for California School of Law, correct?
Right.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah,
It's on
okay.
page 6.
6, yes. I'm going to make a motion that California School of Law's application and self-study for provisional accreditation be received and filed, that the committee determine that the law school appears to be at least substantially comply with the rules for accredited law schools and guidelines for accredited law schools, that staff be directed to schedule an inspection of the school within 60 days to verify whether the law school is in substantial or full compliance with the rules for accredited law schools and guidelines for accredited law schools, and that the inspection report be presented to the committee to allow for further consideration of this application. Any second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Torres.
Dr. Bolton,
Yes.
Judge Brody,
Yes.
Dr. Cox,
Yes.
Mr. Chen, Mr. Efting,
Yes.
Mr. Gongora, Ms. Heisinger,
Yes.
Mr. Iseri,
Yes.
Mr. Kaplan,
Yes.
Ms. Mer,
Yes.
Mr. Lawrence,
Yes.
Ms. Pick,
Yes.
Mr. Reyes,
Yes.
Judge Torioba,
Yes.
Mr. Torres,
Yes.
the motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Next is,
Actually, before you move on, Paul, I just wanted to let everyone know that we're going to take a break after item H, and we'll have a 15-minute break for a working lunch meeting, and we'll resume. So we're going to do H right now, which shouldn't take too long, then we'll have our break. Thanks, Paul.
okay, yeah, we'll take probably almost no time. This is a regular information. This is a report on new administrative leadership at law schools, item 0407. This is simply an informational item that informs us of recent personnel changes at our bar-regulated law schools. Unless there are questions, there's no specific action required. So do we have any questions?
No questions.
Okay, I guess we're done with that one then.
Okay, so right now it's 12:07. Let's just, for time's sake, let's come back at 12:25.
Thank you.